The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the gatehouse of the Obi mansion in Ikoyi. Obinna Nwosu sat on his wooden stool, dressed in a faded security uniform, reading the day's newspaper. At 40 years old, his weathered hands and simple clothes told a story of struggle, or so anyone watching would think. The roar of luxury engines announced Mrs. Adiko Obi's arrival before her convoy of 3 cars pulled up to the gate. Her Range Rover Sport gleamed white in the sunlight, followed by her sister's Mercedes and a third car carrying shopping bags from the most expensive stores in Lagos. Obinna stood immediately, folding his newspaper with practiced efficiency. "Good afternoon, madam." Adiko didn't acknowledge his greeting. Instead, she parked her Range Rover at a deliberately awkward angle that blocked the entire driveway. Her sister Ngozi and 3 friends emerged from the other vehicles, their designer heels clicking on the pavement, their laughter sharp and entitled. "Obinna," Adiko called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Come and rearrange the cars properly. And be careful. Any scratch will come from your salary." "Yes, ma." Obinna walked toward the vehicles under the scorching sun. As he moved the first car, Adiko turned to her friends with a theatrical gesture. "Ladies, let me tell you something hilarious. This Gateman? We grew up in the same compound." The women gasped with exaggerated shock. "No," Mrs. Blessing exclaimed. "You're joking. I'm serious." Adiko's eyes glittered with malice. "His family lived in the boys' quarters of our family compound. My father owned the property. They were, what's the word? Tenants." She laughed. Poor tenants who could barely afford rent. Obinna continued moving the cars, his face impassive, but his mind drifted back to those childhood days. 30 years ago, 8-year-old Adiko twirled in her pink birthday dress on the compound's main lawn. Her party had everything: a huge cake, a DJ, clowns, and gifts piled high. Children from other wealthy families filled the space, playing with expensive toys. 10-year-old Obinna watched from the window of the small boys' quarters where his family lived. His mother, exhausted from washing clothes for 3 different households, stood behind him. "Mama, why can't I go to the party?" young Obinna had asked. "Adiko and I play together sometimes." His mother's face had been sad. "Because we're different, my son." Her father made it very clear. The children from the big house don't mix with children from the boys' quarters. Young Obinna had watched Adiko cut her cake, surrounded by children in expensive clothes, while he wore his only good shirt, already too small and frayed at the edges. But what hurt more was when Adiko looked directly at him through the window and deliberately turned away, laughing with her friends. Even at 8 years old, she had learned to look down on those with less. Present day. "Obinna, you're too slow." Adiko's voice snapped him back to reality. "What's wrong with you? Can't even park 3 cars properly?" He had finished parking them all correctly, but she needed to find fault. It was part of the daily ritual. "Sorry, madam. I've finished now." Adiko pulled out a wad of Naira notes from her designer purse, Nigeria Naira 200 notes, and threw them on the ground at his feet. "Here. For your troubles. Pick it up." The women gasped again, but this time with discomfort. Even by their standards, this was cruel. Mrs. Blessing whispered, "Adiko, that's a bit." "A bit what?" Adiko cut her off, eyes still on Obinna. "He needs to understand his place." "Don't you, Obinna? Tell my friends. Didn't I always say you'd never amount to anything?" Obinna bent down slowly and picked up the money with the same quiet dignity he'd maintained for 6 months. "Thank you, madam." "See." Adiko addressed her friends triumphantly. "This is what happens when you don't take education seriously. When you don't have ambition. Look at me. I married into the Obi family. My husband is one of the most successful real estate developers in Lagos. And look at him, opening my gate." What Adiko didn't see was the slight smile that crossed Obinna's face. What she couldn't know was that hidden in his small gatehouse room was a laptop, an iPhone 14 Pro Max, and a wardrobe containing suits from Savile Row in London. And she definitely didn't know about the email he'd received that morning. "Mr. Nwosu, the Dubai investors have confirmed. $2.3 million contract approved. When can we expect your return to London?" As Attica's friends unloaded shopping bags, thousands of naira worth of unnecessary luxury, Obinna returned to his post. He sat back down and reopened his newspaper, though his mind was elsewhere. His phone buzzed quietly in his pocket. A message from Pastor Joshua. "My son, are you certain about this path? 6 months of humiliation is a long time." Obinna typed back quickly. "It's necessary, Pastor. They need to learn that human dignity isn't defined by bank accounts. My mother died praying they would understand this lesson. I'm finishing what she started." Inside the mansion, Attica was showing off her purchases. A 450,000 Nigerian nairas handbag, shoes worth 200,000 Nigerian nairas, a dress she'd never wear more than once. "And the best part," she said to Ngozi, "is knowing that Obinna sees all this every day. He sees what success looks like, what he could never have." Ngozi laughed. "Sister, you're wicked, but I love it. Why did you hire him specifically, though? Lagos has thousands of gatemen." Attica's smile was cold. "Because when his mother was alive, she used to tell my mother that her son would become someone great one day. Can you imagine? The audacity. I wanted to prove her wrong. I wanted him to see, every single day, that some people are born to open gates and some people are born to own the houses." What neither sister knew was that Richard Obi, Attica's husband, had just pulled up in his own car and heard the entire conversation through the open window. He sat in his vehicle for a long moment, disturbing thoughts crossing his mind. Richard had always found his wife's cruelty distasteful, but he told himself it was just her strong personality. Now, listening to her mock their gateman with such vicious pleasure, something shifted in him. He remembered his father's words from last week, before the old man had fallen into a coma. "Richard, there are things about our family's connection to the Okonkwo's that you need to know. Things about how their wealth was really built." Chief Obi hadn't finished the story before the stroke took him. But the look in his father's eyes had been haunted, guilty. Richard entered through the back door, avoiding his wife's party. He went straight to his study and pulled out his father's old file cabinet, the one the old man had told him to check when the time comes. Inside were documents he'd never seen before. Property deeds from 1952, letters between his grandfather and Attica's grandfather, and a name that appeared repeatedly, Nwosu. Meanwhile, at the gate, Obinna received another message. This one from his colleague at Oxford. "Professor Williams will be in Lagos next week for a conference. He'd love to see you. Should I tell him you're still on your sabbatical?" Obinna smiled. "Tell him I'll see him soon. Very soon." As the sun set over Lagos, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Obinna looked up at the massive mansion where Attica lived in luxury built on secrets she didn't even know existed. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. "Obinna, my son, when you make it, and you will make it, don't forget where you came from. And don't let bitterness poison you. Teach them. Show them that every human being deserves dignity." "I will, Mama," Obinna whispered to the evening air. "The party is in 2 weeks. And at that party, everyone will learn the truth." Inside the gatehouse, he pulled out his expensive laptop and opened a file labeled The Nwosu Legacy, Truth and Reconciliation. It contained 70 years of documents, evidence, and family history that would shake the foundations of 2 of Lagos's most prominent families. But Obinna wasn't interested in revenge. He was interested in something far more powerful, justice, and the restoration of dignity that had been stolen generations ago. 2 weeks. Just 2 more weeks of enduring Attica's cruelty. Then the lesson would begin. Oh my goodness.
Did you catch that?
Obinna is worth millions, but he's been working as a gateman for 6 months just to teach Attica a lesson. And what's in those documents Richard found? What did his dying father try to tell him? If this setup is already fire, smash that like button and subscribe to AfriTales by Annabelle. Drop a comment. Would you endure 6 months of humiliation to teach someone a lesson about human dignity? Chapter 2 reveals the party invitation, and you won't believe what Attica plans to do. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that you should never look down on anyone. Hit that notification bell right now. 2 weeks before the anniversary party, the Obi mansion buzzed with activity. Event planners rushed in and out with fabric samples, caterers presented menu options, and florists competed to provide the most extravagant arrangements. Attica supervised everything with the intensity of a military general, determined that her 20th wedding anniversary would be the talk of Lagos for years to come. "No, no, no," she shouted at a decorator. "The crystal centerpieces must be at least 1 meter tall. I want everyone to see them from across the room. Spare no expense." Her sister Ngozi arrived mid-afternoon, stepping out of her husband's Bentley wearing a dress that cost more than most Nigerians earned in a year. "Sister me," Ngozi called out, embracing Attica with air kisses. "I heard you've invited 3 senators, 2 governors, and half of Banana Island. And the British High Commissioner," Attica added proudly. "Richard's business connections finally paying off. This party will make my 40th birthday celebration look like a child's party." They settled in the expansive living room, surrounded by designer shopping bags and champagne. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the perfectly manicured lawn where white tents were being erected. "So," Ngozi said, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "have you decided on the entertainment? Live band? DJ? That celeb pastor who sings?" Attica's eyes glittered with mischief. "I have something better. Something no one has ever done before." "Tell me." "I'm inviting Obinna, my gateman, to attend as a guest." Ngozi nearly spilled her champagne. "You're joking." "I'm completely serious." Attica leaned forward, her voice dripping with cruel excitement. "Can you imagine? A poor, uneducated gateman sitting among senators and oil magnates? I'll introduce him as my childhood neighbor who never quite made it in life. The contrast will be absolutely delicious." Ngozi's initial shock transformed into wicked delight. "Sister, you're terrible. But it's brilliant. Everyone will be talking about it." "Exactly. I've already planned his table front and center where everyone can see him squirm. I'll make sure the waiters ask him repeatedly if he knows how to use the cutlery. Oh, and I'm having the photographer take special photos of him looking uncomfortable." "But why him specifically? You could humiliate any gateman." Attica's expression hardened. "Because his mother, that woman, used to tell everyone that her precious Obinna would become someone important one day. She said it with such confidence, such pride, like she knew something we didn't. It irritated me for years." She took a long sip of champagne. "When I saw him 2 years ago, struggling to find work, I knew this was my chance. I hired him specifically to prove his mother wrong. Every day, he sees my success. Every day, he's reminded that he's nothing. And at this party, I'll prove it to all of Lagos." What Attica didn't notice was Richard standing in the hallway, frozen in place. He'd come home early and overheard the entire conversation. His hands clenched into fists as disgust washed over him. This wasn't just cruelty, it was calculated psychological torture. And he'd enabled it by staying silent all these months. Ngozi was still laughing. "So, when will you invite him?" "I want to see his face. Today. Right now, actually." Attica stood up, checking her reflection in the ornate mirror. "Come watch. This will be entertaining." The 2 sisters walked toward the gate, their heels clicking on the marble driveway. Obinna was reading as usual, sitting peacefully in the shade of the gatehouse. "Obinna," Attica called out in her sweetest voice, the one she reserved for maximum cruelty. He looked up, closing his book. "Yes, madam. I have wonderful news for you." She paused dramatically. "My husband and I are celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary in 2 weeks. We're having a grand party, the biggest event of the season." Obinna waited silently. "And I would like to invite you, not as staff, but as a guest." Ngozi stifled a giggle behind her hand. "You'll sit with the other guests," Attica continued. "You'll eat the same food as senators and governors. You'll experience how the elite celebrate. Isn't that exciting?" Obinna studied her face for a long moment. He saw the cruelty hidden behind the smile, the trap being laid. He knew exactly what she was planning because she'd been planning variations of it for 6 months. "That's very kind of you, Mrs. Obi," he said calmly. "I accept your invitation. Attica's smile faltered slightly. She'd expected shock, stammering gratitude, maybe even tears of joy at being included in such an exclusive event. Instead, he accepted with the calm dignity of someone who attended such parties regularly. "Don't you want to know what to wear?" she pressed, trying to regain control. "I'll find something appropriate. It's very formal. Black tie. Do you have formal clothes?" "I'll manage, madam." The lack of visible discomfort annoyed Attiku. "Well, good. The invitation will be delivered to you with all the details." As she turned to leave, Obinna added quietly, "Mrs. Obi?" "Yes. Thank you for thinking of me. It will be an evening no one forgets." Something in his tone made Attica pause, but she shook it off. She was in control here. This was her party, her game, her humiliation to orchestrate. As the sisters walked back to the house, Ngozi whispered, "He seemed, I don't know, too calm." "He's probably in shock," Attica dismissed. "Or maybe he's finally accepted his place in life. Either way, this will be spectacular." Inside his study, Richard had made a decision. He pulled out his phone and dialed his family's lawyer. "Barrister Okonkwo, it's Richard Obi. I need you to investigate something for me. My father mentioned a family called Nwosu before he fell ill. I found some old documents, property deeds, letters. I need to know what they mean." "Nwosu." The lawyer's voice changed, became guarded. "Mr. Obi, that's a complicated history. I want to know everything. My father tried to tell me something important. Now he can't speak, and I need answers." There was a long pause. "I'll look into it. But sir, some family histories are better left buried." "Not this one. I want the truth." After hanging up, Richard looked out at the gatehouse where Obinna sat, now back to reading his book. Something about the man's composure, his quiet dignity despite constant humiliation, reminded Richard of his own father in younger days. What was the connection between the Nwosu family and his own? Meanwhile, Obinna had pulled out his hidden phone and was typing a message to Pastor Joshua. "She invited me. The plan proceeds exactly as we discussed." Pastor Joshua's response came quickly. "I've been praying about this, my son. Are you sure you're not letting bitterness guide you?" Obinna typed back, "Pastor, this isn't about bitterness. It's about truth. How many other Obinnas are out there being told they're worthless because they're poor? How many Atticus are out there believing wealth makes them superior? This lesson isn't just for her, it's for everyone who will hear this story." Another message came through, this one from London. "Obinna, the Dubai contract won't wait forever. We need you back. Can you at least give us a timeline?" He responded, 2 weeks. "After the party, I'll return. The mission here will be complete." A third message appeared, this one from an unknown number. "Mr. Nwosu, this is Professor David Williams from Oxford. I'll be in Lagos next week for a conference. Would love to catch up with my star student. Heard you're in town." Obinna smiled. "Perfect timing. Professor, I'd be honored. In fact, I'm attending a party in 2 weeks. Would you like to join me? It will be educational." "Sounds intriguing. Send me the details." As the sun set, Attiku was in her element, planning every detail of Obinna's humiliation. She'd arranged for his table to be prominently placed, but with the oldest, most uncomfortable chairs, the waiters to ask him loudly if he needed help with the menuet special introduction where she'd tell his inspiring story of being her childhood neighbor who stayed humble, photographers to capture his discomfort throughout the evening. "This will be my masterpiece," she told Ngozi over the phone that night. The ultimate reminder that some people are simply born to serve. In the gatehouse, Obinna opened his laptop and reviewed the file he'd been compiling for 18 months. Documents dating back to 1952. Property deeds. Forged signatures. Bank records. Letters between families. A complete history of how the Okonkwo family's wealth was built. And most importantly, proof of how his own family, the Nwosu family, had been systematically destroyed by the very people whose gate he now opened every day. He looked at a faded photograph of his mother, taken a month before she died. She was thin, worn out by a life of struggle, but her eyes still held hope. Mama, he whispered, I kept my promise. I became successful without bitterness. I built wealth through honest work. And now I'm going to teach them the lesson you wanted them to learn. That every human being deserves dignity. That poverty doesn't equal worthlessness. And that stolen wealth will eventually face its reckoning. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, at Attica's grand party, the truth would emerge. Not through violence or revenge, but through revelation. The most powerful weapon against arrogance was truth, spoken with dignity in front of witnesses who could no longer look away. Attica Obi wanted an unforgettable party. She was about to get exactly that, but not in the way she imagined. Wait. Did you catch that? Professor Williams from Oxford is coming to the party. And Richard is investigating the Nwosu family connection. And Attica has no idea what's about to hit her. If this is getting intense, smash that like button and subscribe to AfriTales by Annabelle. Drop a comment. Do you think Richard will stand by his wife or choose justice when the truth comes out? Chapter 3 reveals shocking family secrets that will blow your mind. Share this with everyone who needs to see this. Turn on notifications. Chapter 3 is where everything starts. 1 week before the anniversary party, Richard Obi sat in his father's hospital room, watching the old man sleep. Chief Obi had been in a coma for 3 weeks now, and the doctor said it could go either way. The stroke had been massive, sudden, and the timing felt almost providential, as if his father had held on just long enough to plant the seed of truth before the silence claimed him. Richard's phone buzzed. Barrister Okonkwo calling. Mr. Obi, I've completed the investigation you requested. We need to meet. Today. This isn't something to discuss over the phone. 2 hours later, Richard sat in the lawyer's office, staring at documents spread across the mahogany desk. His hands trembled as he read. Let me understand this correctly, Richard said slowly. My grandfather and Attica's grandfather were business partners with 2 brothers named Okonkwo and Nwosu? Not just business partners, Barrister Okonkwo corrected. The Okonkwo and Nwosu brothers were the primary wealth creators. Your grandfather and Mrs. Obi's grandfather came later as associates who benefited from the existing empire. The lawyer pulled out a faded photograph from 1948. 4 men stood together, smiling. From left to right, Okonkwo Sr., that's Mrs. Obi's great-grandfather. Nwosu Sr., the younger brother. Your grandfather, Obi. And Mrs. Obi's grandfather, also named Okonkwo, but from a different branch of the family. Richard studied the faces. They looked prosperous. Happy even. They were. Until 1952. The lawyer's expression darkened. That's when everything changed. He laid out the sequence of events like a prosecutor building a case. In 1952, the patriarch of the Okonkwo Nwosu family died, leaving his vast estate, land holdings across Lagos, Enugu, and Port Harcourt, plus thriving trading businesses, to be split equally between his 2 sons. The will was clear, Barrister Okonkwo said, showing Richard the original document, yellowed with age. 50-50. Equal shares to both brothers. So, what happened? Okonkwo Sr., the elder brother, didn't want to share. He was ambitious, ruthless. He saw his younger brother as weak, undeserving. The lawyer pulled out more documents. With help from your grandfather and Mrs. Obi's grandfather, he executed a systematic plan to steal everything. The evidence was damning. Forged property deeds showing Okonkwo as sole owner, bribes paid to colonial officials to legitimize the fraud, false debts created in Nwosu's name, business licenses transferred without consent, bank accounts frozen through fabricated legal claims. They destroyed him completely, the lawyer said quietly. Nwosu Sr. spent years trying to fight it, but he was one man against 3 wealthy, connected families. He died in 1960, broken and poor. His children grew up with nothing. Richard felt sick. And my family benefited from this? Your grandfather became Okonkwo's primary business partner after Nwosu was pushed out. The Obi family fortune grew exponentially through access to the stolen wealth. The lawyer met Richard's eyes. I'm sorry, Mr. Obi, but your family's success is built on theft. And so is your wife's. Richard's mind reeled. Does Attica know? I doubt it. This happened generations ago. Most families don't discuss their dark origins. The lawyer paused. But someone knows. Who? The Nwosu descendants. They've kept records. They've been waiting. Richard's blood ran cold. Waiting for what? For the right moment to reveal the truth. For justice. The lawyer leaned forward. Mr. Obi, why did you ask me to investigate this now? What triggered your curiosity? My father. Before the stroke, he told me there were things I needed to know about our connection to the Okonkwo's. He said I should make things right if I ever got the chance. Richard looked at the documents again. And then there's our Gateman. Your Gateman? His name is Obinna Nwosu. The lawyer's eyes widened. Nwosu? As in? I think so. My wife hired him 6 months ago. She knew him from childhood. They grew up in the same compound. She's been... Richard struggled with the words. She's been deliberately humiliating him. She hired him specifically to mock him, to prove he'd never amount to anything. Barrister Okonkwo stood abruptly and walked to the window. Mr. Obi, if this man is a Nwosu descendant, and he's been working for your family for 6 months, this isn't random. He's there for a reason. What reason? I don't know, but you need to find out before it's too late. Meanwhile, at the Obi mansion, Attica was having troubles of her own. Her mother, Mama Okonkwo, had arrived unannounced and was in a state of visible agitation. Attica, we need to talk. Privately. They went to the study. Mama Okonkwo closed the door and turned to her daughter with an expression Attica had never seen before, fear. This Gateman of yours. Obinna. What's his full name? Obinna Nwosu.
Why?
You look like you've seen a ghost. Mama Okonkwo sank into a chair. Because I have. The Nwosu family. They're supposed to be gone. Scattered. Forgotten. Mama, what are you talking about? The old woman stared at her hands. There are things about our family's wealth that you don't know. Things we never discussed because they were shameful. What things? Your great-grandfather. He had a younger brother named Nwosu. They inherited everything equally from their father. But your great-grandfather wanted it all. She looked up at Attica.
He stole it.
With help from Richard's grandfather and others, he systematically destroyed his own brother. Took everything. Left the Nwosu family with nothing. Attica felt her world tilt. That's impossible. We're a respectable family. Built on theft. Mama Okonkwo's voice cracked. I didn't know the full extent until I married your father. By then, it was too late. The guilt ate at him his whole life. He left letters, documents, proof of everything. I thought it was buried with him. Why are you telling me this now? Because if your Gateman is in Nwosu, he's not here by accident. They've been waiting for this. Waiting for their chance. Attica's mind raced. Chance for what? Revenge? He's a poor, uneducated Gateman. What can he possibly do? I don't know. But Attica, you need to fire him.
Today. Right now. No.
Attica's pride overrode her mother's fear. I've already invited him to the anniversary party. I've planned everything. I'm not canceling because of some old family drama that no one cares about anymore. You're making a mistake. Mama, stop being paranoid. Even if what you say is true, what can he do? Sue us? With what money? Expose us? Who would care about something that happened 70 years ago? Attica stood firmly. I'm not scared of a poor Gateman. After her mother left, Attica sat alone, disturbed but unwilling to show weakness. She pulled out her phone and called Ngozi. Sister, did you know about some family history with people called Nwosu? Nwosu?
No, why?
Never mind. Just old stories. Listen, confirm you're coming to the party. I need you there. Of course. Wouldn't miss your triumph for anything. But after hanging up, Attica felt a chill she couldn't explain. Her mother's fear had been real.
Genuine.
What did she know that she wasn't saying? At the same time, in Pastor Joshua's modest church office, Obinna sat across from the elderly minister who'd been his family's spiritual advisor for 3 generations. "Are you certain about this path, my son?" Pastor Joshua asked. "Your mother wanted them to learn a lesson, yes. But she also preached forgiveness." "I'm not seeking revenge, Pastor. I'm seeking revelation." Obinna opened his laptop. "Look at this." He showed the pastor his research, not just the stolen inheritance, but a pattern. The Okonkwo family had built their wealth by exploiting others for 3 generations. Workers cheated of wages. Small businesses crushed through predatory practices. Land grabbed from poor families through legal manipulation. "They've built an empire on the backs of people they consider worthless," Obinna said. "And people like Adaku continue the cycle, genuinely believing they're superior because they have money. Someone needs to show them the truth." "And you believe public humiliation is the answer?" "Not humiliation, illumination. Pastor, how many people at that party look down on their drivers, their housemaids, their gatemen? How many truly believe that poor people are poor because they're lazy or stupid?" This lesson isn't just for Adaku. It's for everyone who needs to see that human worth isn't measured in bank accounts. Pastor Joshua was quiet for a long moment. "Your mother would be proud of you. Not because you're wealthy, but because you haven't let wealth corrupt you." He smiled. "Go ahead. Teach your lesson. But remember, the goal is restoration, not destruction." "I remember, Pastor." As Obinna left the church, his phone rang. An international number. He answered in perfect English, his accent shifting to the refined tone he used in his business life. "Obinna Nwosu speaking." "Mr. Nwosu, this is Catherine Blackwood from Blackwood Consulting in New York. We met at the Oxford Summit last year. I'm calling because we're looking for someone to lead our West African expansion, and your name came up repeatedly. The compensation package starts at $400,000 annually, plus equity." Obinna smiled. "Ms. Blackwood, I'm flattered. Can I call you back next week? I'm in the middle of something important that needs to be completed first." "Of course. Looking forward to hearing from you." After hanging up, Obinna looked at the church where 3 generations of his family had prayed through poverty, struggle, and stolen dignity. His grandfather had died poor. His father had died exhausted. His mother had died hoping. But he would live to see justice. Not the justice of courts and money, though that would come eventually, but the justice of truth spoken in a room full of people who could no longer ignore it. 7 days. In 7 days, at Attica's grand party, the past and present would collide. And nothing would ever be the same. Stop everything. Richard just discovered his entire family fortune is built on theft. Mama Okonkwo is terrified of what Obinna might do. And did you hear that job offer? $400,000 USD a year? Meanwhile, Attica thinks he's just a poor gateman. If this is blowing your mind, smash that like button and subscribe to AfriTales by Annabelle. Comment below, should Richard tell Attica the truth before the party, or let it all come out publicly? Chapter 4 is the party and everything explodes. You absolutely cannot miss this. Share this video right now and turn on all notifications. The Obi Mansion had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale, or a display of excessive wealth, depending on one's perspective. White silk draped from every surface, crystal chandeliers imported from Italy sparkled under strategic lighting, and ice sculptures of swans guarded the entrance. 300 of Lagos's most influential people had confirmed attendance, and the media was camped outside, capturing arrivals for the society pages. Attica stood in her bedroom, admiring herself in a gold-embroidered gown that cost 2.3 million Nigerian nairas. Her stylist had spent 4 hours on her hair and makeup. Diamond jewelry worth more than most people's houses adorned her neck and wrists. She looked every inch the wealthy society queen she believed herself to be. "You look stunning, darling," Richard said from the doorway, but his voice lacked enthusiasm. "You sound tired," Attica noted, applying final touches to her lipstick. "This is supposed to be a celebration. Smile more." Richard had barely slept in a week. The documents from Barrister Okonkwo haunted him. He tried 3 times to tell Attica the truth about Obinna, about their family's dark history, about the storm that was coming. Each time, she dismissed him, too focused on party preparations to listen to old stories that don't matter. Now it was too late. The guests were arriving. Outside, luxury vehicles lined up like a parade of wealth. Governors emerged in traditional agbada and expensive watches. Oil magnates arrived with security details. Society women competed silently to see whose jewelry would outshine the others. Celebrity pastors blessed the event with their presence, already calculating their gifts from the hosts. And in the midst of all this opulence, Obinna Nwosu approached the entrance on foot. He wore a simple but well-tailored traditional outfit, nothing expensive, but clean and dignified. His bearing was calm, his expression peaceful. To the security guards who knew him as the Gateman, his presence among the guests was jarring. "Oga Obinna," one guard whispered. "You day enter as guest." "Madam invited me," Obinna replied simply. Inside, Ngozi spotted him first and grabbed Attica's arm. "Sister, he's here. Your Gateman is actually here." Attica's eyes lit up with malicious glee. "Perfect. Is the photographer ready? I want every moment documented." As Obinna entered the main hall, conversations stuttered and stopped. People stared. Who was this simply dressed man among their designer-clad crowd? The whispers began immediately. "Isn't that the Obi's Gateman? What's he doing here as a guest? This must be some kind of joke." Attica glided across the room, her expensive gown rustling, and took the microphone from the band. The music stopped. All eyes turned to her. "Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our celebration." She paused for applause, soaking in the attention. "Before we begin the festivities, I want to introduce someone very special to me. Someone who represents a beautiful story of humility." Richard closed his eyes, shame burning in his chest. "This is Obinna Nwosu," Attica announced, gesturing toward him with theatrical flair. "My childhood neighbor. We grew up in the same compound, his family lived in the quarters, and my family owned the property. And today, he works for me as my Gateman." Uncomfortable laughter rippled through the crowd. Some guests looked confused, others shocked by the obvious cruelty. "I invited him here tonight," Attica continued, her voice sugary sweet, "because I believe in recognizing all kinds of people, the successful and the less successful, the wealthy and the humble. Don't we all need reminders of our blessings?" From the back of the room, a voice cut through the awkward applause. "Excuse me, but I think there's been some confusion." Everyone turned. A white man in his 60s, distinguished-looking in an expensive suit, walked through the crowd with the confidence of someone used to command. "Who are you?" Attica demanded, her smile faltering. "Professor David Williams, Oxford University Business School." He reached Obinna and extended his hand warmly. "Obinna, so good to see you. Though I must say, I'm confused by this introduction. Gateman? Is this part of your research project?" The room went completely silent. Obinna smiled slightly. "Hello, Professor. Thank you for coming." Attica's face showed the first cracks of panic. "Research project?
What are you talking about?"
"This man is my employee." "This man," Professor Williams interrupted, his voice carrying authority, "is one of my most brilliant former students. He completed his MBA at Oxford with the highest honors our school has awarded in a decade. His thesis on generational wealth and economic justice was published in 3 international journals." Gasps echoed around the room. "There must be some mistake," Attica began, but the professor continued. "Mr. Nwosu currently runs a consulting firm in London that advises Fortune 500 companies. Last I heard, his net worth was somewhere around—" He glanced at Obinna with a smile. "What was it?" $5 million. "Give or take," Obinna said quietly. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Senators and governors exchanged confused looks. Society women pulled out their phones, frantically Googling Obinna Nwosu consultant. Attica's face had gone from flushed with triumph to pale with confusion. "That's impossible. He's been working as my gateman for 6 months. He lives in a gatehouse. He's poor. Is he? Professor Williams looked genuinely puzzled. Obinna, what are you doing working as a gateman? Are you conducting research on labor conditions? Economic anthropology? I know you like hands-on projects. Before Obinna could answer, another voice spoke from the entrance. Perhaps I can explain. An elderly woman entered, supported by a younger man carrying a briefcase. She was thin, dignified, wearing traditional attire. Her eyes swept the room with a mixture of sadness and determination. My name is Adana Nwosu, she announced. I'm Obinna's aunt, and I'm here to tell you all a story. A story about this family's wealth and where it really came from. Mama Okonkwo, standing near the back, made a small sound of distress and sank into a chair. Richard felt his heart pounding. This was it. The moment his father had tried to warn him about. Attica looked frantically between Obinna, his aunt, and the professor. What is happening? Someone explain what's happening. Obinna finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying clearly through the silent room. Mrs. Obi, you invited me here to humiliate me. To remind everyone that I'm just a poor gateman who never made it in life. You wanted to use me as entertainment, as a cautionary tale. He stepped forward, and despite his simple clothes, he commanded the room with quiet authority. But I accepted your invitation for a different reason. Not to be humiliated, but to illuminate. Not to be your joke, but to tell the truth. A truth your family has buried for 70 years. What truth? Attica's voice was barely a whisper. The young man with the briefcase stepped forward. My name is Barrister Chitty. I represent the Nwosu family in a matter of historical injustice and theft. He opened the briefcase and pulled out documents, spreading them on a nearby table. A projector screen descended from the ceiling. Richard had arranged that himself, knowing this moment would come. In 1952, Barrister Chitty began, his voice professional and clear. A man named Okonkwo Sr. and his younger brother Nwosu Sr. inherited equal shares of their father's estate. Land holdings across Lagos, Enugu, and Port Harcourt. Trading businesses. Substantial wealth. Images appeared on the screen. Old photographs, property deeds, the original will. Okonkwo Sr. decided he didn't want to share. With help from business partners, including Mr. Richard Obi's grandfather, he executed a systematic plan to steal everything from his younger brother. More images flashed, forged documents, bribe receipts, false legal claims. The room was absolutely silent. Governors and business moguls leaned forward, recognizing the historical importance of what they were witnessing. The Nwosu family was destroyed, the lawyer continued. Obinna's great-grandfather died poor. His grandfather struggled his entire life. His father worked himself to death, trying to give his children opportunities. And Obinna's mother. He paused, emotion entering his professional tone. She died last year, never having lived in the comfort that should have been her birthright. Adana, Obinna's aunt, spoke next, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. I'm 78 years old. I remember when we lost everything. I remember my father, Obinna's grandfather, begging his own cousins for help. They laughed at him, called him weak, shut doors in his face. She looked directly at Attiku. You hired my nephew to mock him, to remind him every day that you're wealthy, and he's not. But child, your wealth was built on theft, on the suffering of our family. Every naira you spend, every luxury you enjoy, it was stolen from us. Attica stumbled backward, her expensive gown suddenly feeling like a costume. I didn't know. This was generations ago. I had nothing to do with it. But you knew Obinna, her aunt replied. You knew his family struggled. And instead of kindness, you chose cruelty. You hired him to humiliate him. That's not your great-grandfather's sin. That's yours. Richard stepped forward, his voice heavy with guilt. Attiku, I tried to tell you. Last week, I found documents in my father's office. Our family benefited from the theft too. My father knew. He tried to tell me before the stroke. He wanted us to make it right. Attica looked at her husband with betrayal in her eyes. You knew? You knew, and you said nothing? I tried. You wouldn't listen. You were too busy planning this party, planning to humiliate Obinna. Because I didn't know. Attica's voice cracked, tears starting to fall, ruining her perfect makeup. How was I supposed to know? Obinna's voice was gentle but firm. You weren't supposed to know the history, Attiku. But you were supposed to treat me like a human being regardless. That's the lesson. That's why I came back to Nigeria. Why I worked as your gateman. Why I endured 6 months of your mockery. He looked around the room at the gathered elite. How many of you treat your drivers, your housemaids, your gatemen with dignity? How many of you truly believe they're equals in God's eyes? Or do you see them as lesser beings as I was seen? The question hung in the air, uncomfortable and challenging. I didn't come for revenge, Obinna continued. I came to teach. To show that human worth isn't defined by bank accounts or social status. My mother died praying you'd all learn this lesson. Professor Williams spoke up. For context, ladies and gentlemen, Obinna turned down a $400,000 annual salary last week to complete this mission. He owns properties in London and Dubai. His consulting firm is valued at over $8 million US. He could buy this mansion 10 times over. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. The poor gateman they'd all been prepared to pity or mock was wealthier than most people in the room. Attiku collapsed into a chair, her perfect party destroyed, her social standing crumbling in real time. Around the room, guests were filming, texting, posting to social media. By tomorrow, this story would be across Nigeria. But Obinna wasn't finished yet. Oh my God. Professor Williams just exposed everything. The aunt revealed the family theft. And Obinna is worth $8 million. If you're screaming right now, destroy that like button and subscribe to AfriTales by Annabelle. Comment, did Attiku get what she deserved? Chapter 5 is the finale where Obinna makes his final statement and you won't believe what he does. Share this immediately and turn on notifications. The ending will leave you speechless. The Obi mansion, which minutes ago had been filled with music and celebration, now felt like a courtroom. 300 of Lagos's most powerful people stood frozen, phones out, witnessing what would become the most talked about event in Nigerian social history. Obinna stood at the center of it all, no longer the humble gateman but a man of evident authority and education. His simple traditional outfit now seemed like a deliberate choice rather than a sign of poverty, the attire of a man who had nothing to prove. Attiku sat collapsed in her chair, her 2.3 million Nigerian nairas gown pooling around her like melted gold. Tears streamed down her face, destroying hours of professional makeup. Her sister Ngozi tried to comfort her, but seemed equally shell-shocked. I want to be very clear about something, Obinna said, his voice carrying across the silent room. I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came to reveal truth. There's a difference. He nodded to Barrister Chitty, who pulled up more documents on the projector screen. These are current property records, the lawyer explained. The land stolen from an Nwosu family in 1952 are now worth approximately 2.4 billion Nigerian nairas. The business interests, trading connections, and other assets, if they had remained with the Nwosu family and grown naturally, would be worth another 800 million Nigerian nairas. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Over 3 billion naira in stolen wealth. We have filed legal documentation, Barrister Chitty continued, proving the fraud. We have witnesses, some still alive, who remember what happened. We have the forged documents, the bribe records, everything. By law, the Okonkwo family owes the Nwosu family restitution. Richard stepped forward, his face grave. How much? Approximately 1.8 billion Nigerian nairas, accounting for depreciation and legal considerations. Attiku made us sound like a wounded animal. We don't have that kind of liquid money. The properties, the businesses, it would destroy us. It destroyed us, Obinna's aunt said quietly. My father died poor. My brother, Obinna's father, worked himself to death. We lost everything. Why should you keep what was stolen? The room erupted in whispers. Senators and governors exchanged knowing looks. This was a legitimate legal case. There was no defending theft, even historical theft. But then Obinna raised his hand, and silence fell again. However, he said carefully, I'm not interested in destroying the Okonkwo family. Or the Obi family. That would make me no better than those who destroyed mine. Everyone leaned forward. What I want, Obinna continued, is something more valuable than money. I want acknowledgement. I want the truth to be known. And I want change. He looked directly at Ataku. Mrs. Obi, Ataku, you invited me to this party to humiliate me. To remind me and everyone here that I'm nothing because I was working as a gateman. But look around this room. He gestured to the assembled crowd. How many drivers are parked outside, waiting for their bosses? How many maids are at home, having cooked the food their employers ate before coming here? How many gatemen are at their posts, protecting the houses of people who look down on them? The question hung heavy in the air. Every single one of those people is a human being with dreams, dignity, and worth, Obinna said passionately. They're not lesser because they serve. They're not worthless because they're poor. And that's what I needed you all to see. He turned to address the entire room. I am successful. I have wealth. I've built an empire through education and hard work. But I am no more valuable as a human being now than I was 6 months ago when I was opening Attica's gate. My worth didn't change. Only your perception did. A woman in the crowd, Senator Adeyemi's wife, suddenly burst into tears. He's right, she sobbed. I've been terrible to our housekeeper. I've treated her like she's invisible, like she's nothing. Another voice spoke up. A prominent pastor. I've done the same. I preach about loving thy neighbor, but I've never learned my driver's children's names. I've never asked about his struggles. Like a dam breaking, confessions began flooding out. Business owners admitted underpaying workers. Society women acknowledged their cruelty to domestic staff. The room filled with the sound of people confronting their own complicity in a system that valued wealth over humanity. Obinna watched it all with quiet satisfaction. This was the lesson his mother had died praying for. Not revenge, not destruction, but revelation that led to change. Professor Williams stepped forward. If I may add something, Obinna's doctoral thesis proposed a model for this. He called it restorative economic justice. Not destroying the current wealth holders, but creating systems of acknowledgement and reparation that benefit everyone. What does that mean practically? Richard asked, genuinely wanting to understand. Obinna pulled out his phone and displayed a document. I've established the Nwosu Family Foundation with $2 million of my own money. This foundation will provide scholarships, business grants, and support for families who've been economically oppressed or cheated. He looked at Ataku, then at Richard. I'm not asking for 1.8 billion Nigerian nairas. I'm asking for partnership. I want the Okonkwo and Obi families to contribute to this foundation. Not because I'm forcing you, but because it's the right thing to do. Because it's how we break the cycle. Richard moved immediately. I'll contribute 200 million Nigerian nairas. Immediately. And I'll work with my lawyers to determine what else our family owes. Mama Okonkwo stood up from where she'd been sitting, tears streaming down her aged face. I've carried this guilt for 40 years. Since the day I married into the Okonkwo family and learned the truth. She looked at Obinna. I'll contribute everything I have personally. It won't undo the past, but perhaps it can help the future. Attica sat frozen, watching her world transform around her. Her husband committing family money. Her mother confessing. Her perfect party turned into a public reckoning. But what about me? She whispered. What happens to me now? Obinna walked over and knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level. The gesture was so unexpected, so kind, that Ataku began sobbing harder. Ataku, he said gently, you can choose who you become from this moment forward. Yes, you were cruel to me. Yes, you hired me specifically to degrade me. But you can change. You can learn. You can be part of the solution instead of the problem. How? She asked through tears. Everyone's filming this. By tomorrow, I'll be the most hated woman in Lagos. My reputation is destroyed. Your reputation as someone who valued wealth over humanity, yes. But you can build a new reputation. As someone who learned,
Who changed?
who helped others avoid your mistakes. He stood and addressed the room again. This is being filmed.
Good.
Let it be filmed. Let this story spread across Nigeria. Let every person who sees this ask themselves, how do I treat people I consider beneath me? And let them choose to do better. Governor Adelik stepped forward, visibly moved. Mr. Nwosu, I'd like to make a public commitment. My administration will investigate all historical land and property frauds in Lagos State. We'll create a commission for restorative justice. You've shown us that healing is possible without destruction. Other politicians began making similar commitments. Business leaders pledged to review their treatment of workers. The party had become a movement. Pastor Joshua, who'd been standing quietly in the back, came forward. My son, he said to Obinna, pride shining in his eyes, your mother is smiling in heaven. You chose the narrow path. Not revenge, but redemption. Obinna embraced the old pastor. She taught me well. As the evening continued, no longer a party, but a gathering of transformation, Adeku slowly stood up. Her expensive gown was wrinkled, her makeup ruined, but something in her eyes had changed. She walked to where Obinna's aunt sat and did something no one expected. She knelt down. Mama Adana, Attica said, using the respectful term, I cannot undo what my great-grandfather did to your family. I cannot give you back the years of struggle, the dignity stolen, the opportunities lost. But I am deeply, truly sorry, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. The elderly woman looked at Adeku for a long moment, then placed her hand on the younger woman's head in blessing. Child, acknowledgement is the first step to healing. I accept your apology. The room erupted in applause, not the polite society applause of earlier, but genuine, moved applause from people witnessing real transformation. Obinna removed his simple traditional top, revealing an expensive designer shirt underneath, symbolic of shedding the Gateman identity he'd worn for 6 months. I came back to Nigeria with a mission, he announced. That mission is now complete. I'll return to London next week, but the foundation will remain here, operating with a board that includes representatives from the Nwosu, Okonkwo, and Obi families working together. He looked around at the gathered elite. To everyone here, you came tonight expecting entertainment. A poor gateman being mocked for your amusement. Instead, you witnessed truth. What you do with that truth is up to you. Richard put his arm around his wife, not in support of her past actions, but in commitment to walking with her through change. We'll do better, he said publicly. Both of us. As the gathering began to break up, people didn't leave immediately. They stayed, talking, discussing, making commitments. The event had fundamentally shifted something in Lagos's social consciousness. Obinna was preparing to leave when a young man approached him, one of the waiters serving at the party. Sir, the young man said nervously, my name is Samuel. I'm studying engineering at Unilag, working nights to pay my fees. What you said tonight about human dignity. I've never heard anyone from the upper class say that before. Thank you. Obinna smiled and pulled out a business card. Samuel, contact my foundation on Monday. We have scholarships for engineering students. And keep studying. Nigeria needs engineers who remember what it was like to struggle. The young man's eyes filled with tears.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you, sir. As Obinna finally walked toward the exit, he passed the gatehouse, his home for 6 months. He paused, looking at it one last time. Then he walked out of the Obi compound, not as a gateman, but as a man who had completed his purpose. Behind him, the party that was supposed to showcase Adeku's superiority had instead become Lagos's awakening to a truth long buried, that every human being, regardless of economic status, deserves dignity and respect. And sometimes, the most powerful lessons are taught not through revenge, but through revelation. But wait, the story doesn't end here. As Obinna's taxi drove away, his phone buzzed with a message that made him freeze. Mr. Nwosu, this is Chief Obi's private nurse. He just woke up from his coma. His first words were, Has my son learned the truth yet? He's asking to see you immediately. And in the mansion, Attica discovered something in her mother's old documents that would change everything they thought they knew about the family history. To be continued in part 2. Wait. Chief Obi just woke up from his coma. And there's more to the story. If this finale is giving you chills, absolutely demolish that like button and subscribe to AfriTales by Annabelle. Drop a comment. What do you think Chief Obi wants to tell Obina? What did Attica find in those documents? Part 2 is coming, and trust me, you think you know the whole story, but the biggest revelations are still ahead. The Nwosu family history has more secrets, and they'll blow your mind. Share this with everyone and turn on all notifications so you don't miss part 2. This story is going viral, and you need to be there for the conclusion. See you in part 2. End of part 1.